I actually wanted to start by defining on a very base level, and we'll hear from each of you maybe on this. When we talk about crisis, what are we speaking to? I think there's something powerful in naming it to get it out of the anxiety in our bodies into like, okay, this is what's so. And so, Kylie, I'll start with you. How would you define the crisis or the polycrisis that we are in at this moment?
The polycrisis, that language is really just speaking to the way that there are many crises that are happening concurrently at this moment on Earth, this like big social, political moment that we're all living through as the human species. I think that so often people are really oriented towards this idea of preparing for one thing. But we all know that we actually live in an interconnected reality. And especially right now, it's always more than one thing. So just naming that for us, it's important to help people, I think, try to understand that it's not just preparing maybe for evacuation, it's also considering the bigger political crises. So these big attacks that a lot of our community members are facing and under, that all contributes to our experience of how we might be trying to attempt to just do some prep for evacuation, for instance. So yeah, it's an understanding that there's concurrent crises and they're amplifying each other.
It's so interesting to me, again, to shift out of like individualism as the lens. Like it's not one individual thing, right? These interconnected crises is what we're feeling. It's one reason why I really wanted to start this podcast is I believe that if we start looking at the problem on multiple levels, multiple ways in, we'll start to see the themes. And it's actually through that questioning that after season one, it became so clear that community is the common thread that we need, which is really so much of what Compassion Crisis is also pointing to. So, Summer, I would love to hear your take on the polycrisis, or that what you would define as this crisis that we are speaking to.
Thank you. Kailea defined the polycrisis and contextualized it really well. In terms of disaster, something that I would talk about when I was talking to people specifically about disaster preparedness is I would remind them that disaster could be a financial disaster, a medical disaster, a family disaster. It's not necessarily a natural hazard like earthquakes, tsunamis, storms that result in disaster. And so 2020 was a perfect example of this. Being a single mother, I was limited in how I could move to the grocery store, how I chose to move to the grocery store or not. And while I am blessed with a family, it's also difficult to put so much onto only a select amount of individuals in your life, right? And I found myself reaching into my disaster preparedness pantry. And so I was storm supply. So we get lots of hurricanes where I'm from, which is Maui. And so I have a hurricane supply of food and I tapped into it during 2020. And that was the first time for me that I had tapped into my backup supply because I needed it, not because I was refreshing it. So that was enlightening. And I wanted to talk about how, when Kailea said it, shifting from preparing for one thing. I think those of us who grew up in geographical spaces where things like electricity or running water aren't necessarily going to be there, clean running water isn't necessarily going to be there in more rural locations. We have a life that is oriented toward accommodating that, allowing us to remain comfortable when the power goes out for 8 hours or 8 days. And so in some ways, that is what has made me drawn to preparedness and teaching others about preparedness, even though I still feel like a novice, because it was required for a sort of more rural lifestyle. And so, again, not preparing for a single event, but more reorienting your life to something that's going to sustain